welcome to the hangar. I'm going to talk a little bit about some extra information around the Piper Aztec review video that I did. So this was sort of, shall we say, slightly requested, but a little bit of extra information about the Aztec and the Apache line, which is what the Aztec came from. I'm a bit of a history buff. I really enjoy history and learning about history and all the information that's there, and all the old airplanes are really, there's some really fantastic history with their development and what they've done and where they've been, and there's some really great things that I like about them. So the Aztec that was in the video, my Aztec there, I have everything from it, including the original binder that came with it from the factory. We've got, Hartzell owner's propeller manuals. I've got the warranty card for the aircraft that was completed and filled in for Ross Lynch Motors, who originally bought the airplane. I even have the letter that he used. He was an Oldsmobile dealership. I even have the letter that he wrote in 1974 on the 13th of June to sell the airplane when he was finished with it. And just going through the logs and everything can be really interesting to see where the airplane's been and who's had it, and sort of that old adage of you don't really own an airplane, you just sort of take care of it for a while until you pass it on to someone else. So the Piper Apache was the first in the line. It was first sold in 1954, and Piper didn't really come up with the whole idea on their own. They had bought basically the aircraft derived from a Stinson, twin Stinson, which used, I believe, 90 horsepower engines and had a T-tail on it and was a metal tubed fuselage with a fabric covering. So Piper covered that metal tube fuselage with aluminum. They put 150 horsepower Lycoming engines in it, and they put a conventional tail on the aircraft. And it's I think they're a really neat looking little airplane. They've got a lot of character to them. They're fairly underpowered at only 150 horsepower. They were a 5-seat airplane, the 5th seat being in the baggage compartment really though, and not a very accessible seat. They quite quickly upgraded those to 160 horse full feathering propellers, and that came with a 300-pound gross weight increase from the original 3500. But again, at gross weight, still a very low single engine performance, and the small tail on them meant that they had a very high single engine safe speed. The single engine safe speed, I believe, is about 95 miles an hour in an Apache, whereas the bigger Aztecs actually have a lower speed of 80, partly or mainly because of the very large tail that they have that helps keep your directional control. So the Apache definitely suffers from not very good single-engine service ceiling. Again, I don't have all the numbers right in front of me right now, but you're looking probably around 2,500-foot service ceiling in an Apache, and if you've got flaps down and gear down and you're preparing to land, from what most people say, you can eat up an awful lot of altitude before you get the airplane leveled off and in a state to climb again. The circuit speed that you would generally find in the airplane tends to be less than the single-engine safe speed, and so once, or at least in the clean configuration, so if you have that failure, it can be quite exciting. Now, because of the 150 horse engines, very economical to feed and pretty good on the maintenance as well. Lots of parts available there. In 1960, they came out with the Aztec, and that was a 250 horsepower Lycoming version of the aircraft. And then in 1962, the B model, which is what I have, they were the first of the long nose aircraft. They were 6 seats with 3 rows of seats, 2 baggage compartments now, a nose compartment and a rear compartment, and you could get them in 1962 as a carbureted, which is what mine is. You could get them as a fuel injected, that was an option, and you could also get them with turbochargers. So pretty big change to the airplane, and the Aztec sales basically destroyed the Apache sales. So they tried to pick up the Apache a little bit with a 235 derated versions of the 250 horse Lycomings. Basically, they were able to run them on 80 octane fuel. And a little less horsepower, but they only built something like 115 or 125 of those airplanes, so very limited production there. Now, there's a lot of modifications available for the aircraft. There's a huge amount of modifications available for the aircraft, but as I said in the other video, a lot of the companies that were making things have disappeared. So you could buy an STC to up the gross on the early Aztecs, basically from 1960 to 1963, from 4,800 to 5,200. If you've got it, great. If you don't have that for those airplanes already, the STC is still out there. The company that has it is no longer in existence, so kind of good luck finding that. Metco made loads of different wingtips. Like you could have a Horner-style wingtip, you could have a Horner-style wingtip with auxiliary tanks in it. Again, that has, in the last couple of years, all gone out of business, and a couple of other companies, like Knots to You and things like that, bought up a lot of the different features that they had, or different components that those companies had, but the Aztec wingtips, the aftermarket ones, weren't one of them. They weren't done in the deal, so they're not available. There was a lot of modifications on the Apaches that is still available and can be done, and it makes them look a little more like the Aztecs and streamlines them and stuff like that, and they have what they call the Geronimo conversions, and there's a number of items that they can do to them. They changed the round tail for a more square tail and a larger tail. Basically it looks like the Aztec tail. That greatly improves their directional control, gives them a little better aerodynamics, and helps with the airspeed. They have wingtip modifications for them. They have cowling, huge cowling mod, gives them better cooling, much better dynamic properties, aerodynamic properties as well. They can enclose the wheel wells and tidy up lots of fairly draggy components that were on the original aircraft. They can provide you with an extra slope to the windshield. They can provide a much longer nose. The nose is very short and blunt on the Apache, and I quite like the look. It's kind of a fun look, but it's really not very aerodynamic. And if you go to the long nose, it's something like 10 to 15 miles an hour of extra cruise you can get out of the airplane. So the Geronimo conversions and modifications really do improve the performance of the Apache aircraft and make them a much more capable small twin. The other thing that was done to them was engine conversions, and they could put up to 200 horsepower engines, I believe, in the original Apaches. So obviously that would give you a lot more power, thrust, speed, and climb, and so on and so forth. So pretty serious conversion there. So depending on what you're doing, the Apache is still, I think, a really great plane if you're just looking for some time building and don't want to break the bank and do some multi-engine flying. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a great airplane to learn multi-engine flying on, because you haven't got loads of power just to overcome everything, so you're actually going to have to fly with some really good techniques, just like learning to fly floats with a 65 horse J3 as opposed to 300 horse 185. You've got to get some finesse sorted out to get that lower horsepower aircraft off the water. Probably a Champ or a Chief would be even more challenging for you. So still a really great little airplane, and if they've got lots of the conversions to them, you can really speed them up and improve their performance, single engine performance, and their cross-country capacity. The Aztec obviously still has the ability to get some modifications on them, and is a much larger aircraft already with much bigger engines, and has that ability to carry a really great load, and depending on the model you bought with the options, can be capable of flying in icing conditions, may have weather radar on it, and a whole bunch of extras like that. And that's where the huge price difference comes in buying the aircraft. There's some really, really cheap ones out there. That normally means they've probably had a pretty tough life. They probably haven't been treated very nicely in the preceding years, and they're going to need a lot of attention to get them back to an airworthy status. Now, some other really amazing modifications that you can do for the Aztec are the Nomad Conversions. So you can actually get amphibious floats or straight floats for the aircraft if you've got the right one. You'd have to check out their information to be sure, but I believe it's for the fuel-injected versions, probably C's and later. They also do, same company does modifications to provide you with a pilot side door, and they have a quick cowl removal as well, again I believe for the fuel-injected models. And the cowling is a real bear on the Aztec. I'm not really sure what they were thinking when they dreamt that up, but it was certainly that they wanted you to, really spend all day taking the cowls off is what it feels like. So I hope that answers a few questions for some people that had a few more queries about the airplane. Loads of history out there, lots of research can be done, and as always, if you get an opportunity to go and fly with someone in an airplane, it's really great, but there's some really neat stuff with the aircraft, and it depends on what you like. I definitely like the older airplanes, just the way the instrument panels are laid out, the way the controls look. I like that stuff. It's sort of a bygone era, and you can definitely find that in the Apaches, especially in the Apaches, because they're a 50s aircraft, and then the early Aztecs as well. You get into the later model ones, and you're getting to sort of more conventional controls and things like that. So stay safe. Hope you get some good flying adventures soon. Happy tailwinds, and we'll talk to you all soon.